Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Beyond the Saga, where we discuss all those stories in the comics, in the books, in the games beyond the Skywalker saga. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. How are you, Hannah?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. This evening, we are continuing on the comics in this episode as we dive into the Star Wars comics. Not just the Star Wars comics, but the title Star Wars as we dive into the next volume. But before we do, if you want, if you can, go back and listen to our first crack at this when we did volume 1, which is called Skywalker Strikes. It is a direct pickup after episode 4. So really good series to bridge that gap between episode 4 and 5, because this series does run, I think, 75 issues all the way up to literally right before The Empire Strikes Back. So we're diving into that. Hope you have enjoyed our first issue on that, first episode on that. So this we are continuing, which is volume 2 called Showdown on the Smuggler's Run, and this is the volume that we're gonna talk about. Now, I will preface this that technically this book captures issues 7 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
But issue 7 was what they call kind of a I don't even know, like a special issue, a special addition to the series, where it dives into the journals of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke finds that journal in the first volume where we talked about when he goes back to Obi-Wan's hut on Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
And so Luke starts paging through and reading the journals, right? And this issue 7 is one of the stories in that journal. So what we decided to do, because there's several of these throughout the series, they actually made a trade collecting those stories. So we'll cover those at a later time. Right? Yeah. So what we're going to talk about is issues 8 through 12, which is these 5 issues of Showdown on the Smuggler's Moon. So picking directly up from where we left off the first volume, Hannah, overall review, what did you think about these comics?
I mean, before we start... Sorry, excuse me. Before we don't try to swallow and breathe at the same time. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I think you summed it up best before we started recording, is that this is a lesson for Luke, and that he needs his friends to help him.
Mm.
And because he decides to go on his own because he's endangering his friends, but in going on his own, he ends up endangering his friends.
Right.
And it's funny when you compare that to in Empire Strikes Back, when he decides to go off on his own, and then he's like, wait, I got to go help my friends. And Yoda and Obi-Wan are saying, if you help your friends, you're putting them in danger. So I think it just helps.
Yeah.
And put Luke in this situation where he doesn't have the wisdom yet of a Jedi. He doesn't know when is the right time to do what. When is the right time to make X, Y, and Z decisions. And in these volumes, we see he makes a lot of mistakes. He's still very impulsive. He's still a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He acts very much like a kid, very unwise. And then on the other hand, you have Han, Leia, and Han's wife on their thing. And, you know, Leia's rightfully so pretty upset about all of that. And Han's trying to explain why they're not really married, but they are. It's a bit of a weird thing. But I personally favor Luke's story over that, because that at some point just gets a little too repetitive.
Right.
But with Luke, you really get to see him. I mean, poor guy. He's trying to figure out this whole Jedi thing on his own.
Very true. Yeah, he is, and he truly is at this point. I mean, we know that. I mean, technically, we know that Ahsoka's around in this point in time, but technically, he is the last Jedi. I mean, he's the only one out there really trying to bring the order back. He's the one that Yoda and Obi-Wan are entrusting to bring the Jedi back, but there's no guidance. I mean, he has no idea that, all the Empire has destroyed or gotten rid of all the history of the Jedi. So what he is doing, which is, and I think we might have mentioned this the last episode, the last time we talked about Volume 1, was what's interesting is that he's doing now what he does also later after Return of the Jedi. He is going out seeking those relics or something to guide him, because even after Return of the Jedi, he felt still that he had to go and still figure out how to start a Jedi Order, and what do I do, how do I do that, where do I do that. So he was looking at the old first temples and trying to find out how to do that. But in this, what's crazy is that as in the title it says Showdown on the Smuggler's Moon. We haven't seen a lot of the Smuggler's Moon. Well, the Smuggler's Moon is Nar Shaddaa, which is in the middle of Hutt space. If those of you are familiar with that, Nar Shaddaa and now Hutta and other planets like that, in the middle of just bad places, right? He felt like he had to go somewhere bad in order to drum up the leads to really find something. He does come across, which I thought was really neat, he does come across a lot of artifacts.
That was really cool, but it also makes sense. Of course they're going to be somewhere where they're going to be smuggled on the black market, et cetera, because they are highly valued. And if you're seen with one, then the Empire is going to think you're a Jedi.
That's right.
So it sort of makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, why again are you going by yourself?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's putting himself in harm's way for sure. But that's interesting you brought up about, because again, this is about Luke, I feel like, but it is, we last picked up Han and Leia when they were interrupted by Han's wife, apparently, Sana Starros. And so there's that storyline as well. But you had mentioned off air about how what you got out of that storyline. What were your takes out of that storyline?
The thing is that with that storyline, you really get the sense that Han truly cares about Leia and what she thinks of him. Because I feel like he's such a bad boy that with any other woman he'd be like, yeah, whatever. Okay, fine, you don't believe me, whatever. But with her, he's constantly saying, she is not my wife, not really anyway. And he's just like, he's constantly trying to get Leia to just listen to him and understand. And that shows, wow, okay. So you already see a change in character there where he truly does care about her. Mm-hmm. And he loves her, and he wants her to not think this of him, and that to not think that he's already taken.
Right. And as I reread it too, I'm still not quite sure if Leia actually cares or not.
She cares.
Yeah, I felt like she was a little irritated by it, but not necessarily irritated that he's taken, almost irritated that he is so reckless about something like that.
I think it's a little more than that. I think she's irritated of, you're with me, I'm the other woman now. Because if you remember the first volume, there was a bit of flirting that was going on between the two of them.
Right.
So in this case, she's like, oh, well, excuse me, I won't get in your way. And the way that I interpret it, and maybe this is just because I'm a woman and this is how I would view it, is if that happened to me, I would be so mad that I got played. So it's not necessarily being reckless about the marriage. it's being reckless about how you played me.
Yeah.
Me, a princess. After everything we went through, you played me.
Yeah.
So
I can see
that's
that.
why she constantly is digging at him, because she wants to hurt him as much as he hurt her.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because she's also a kid. I mean, a lot of times I keep on thinking Leia is years older than Luke, but they're twins.
Yeah.
You know, she's still a kid. She still isn't, at peak maturity, I guess. I mean,
she's 19 years old. Yeah.
She's a teen still. So, she still has those feelings,
Yeah.
So I could be wrong, but that's how I read it. I read it that she was irritated with the fact that he played her.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why she was constantly stabbing him back with those with those comments was because she wanted him to hurt as much as she was hurting.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's funny how, like we said earlier, this thing is we're still 3 years until, Hoth and The Empire Strikes Back. So their relationship doesn't really get that close, because by the time we get to Empire, and again, we'll see a lot of this throughout the comic, I'm sure. There's going to probably be a lot of these kind of situations with Luke or Han and Leia about, do you care about me or don't you? Do you care about me or don't you? And then, of course, we see that famous scene in Hoth in the hallway, like, well, what do you need? Just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, probably not. It's like, they're still there. It's like, it seems like it's this constant thing that's going to be played out in this book, which is, I think, pretty funny.
Yes.
Now, a little side note on Sana Staros is that she actually becomes a known character and affiliated with Dr. Aphra. So those of you that are into the Dr. Aphra character in the comics, Sana is definitely involved with her in those storylines. So it's not just a one-off character that pops in and out. She does become a pretty prominent character in Star Wars, at least in the publishing side of things right now. Okay, so what else? What other, without obviously giving too much away, what else stood out as far as things you really enjoyed out of the story?
I'm not going to say too much on this because I really don't want to give it away, but all I got to say is the last the last bit probably carries some of my favorite artwork.
Yeah. I think you can describe it. You could say it. It's like a tease, right?
It's a tease. I don't know. I feel like it's such a spoiler though. Like, I will say this. Obviously, Luke's friends come to rescue him. And they end up doing something that is pretty epic.
Yes. That's pretty epic.
That's all I'm going to say. I think that's a good tease without, saying explicitly what happens.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just say that. I will say this. No. Okay. Okay. There's lightsabers involved.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. There.
And that's not giving too much away.
No, it's not, because Luke has. Well, does he have it? Does he not? Because there's a mistake that happens that makes you go, why? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not giving too much away, but the artifacts we're talking about, which are a lot of the Jedi artifacts, like you said, probably bought in the black market. Gracchus the Hutt is kind of one of the main villains in this storyline, as well as we're introduced, which I thought it was really cool. We're introduced to a character named Creel.
Yes.
Who then identifies as a stormtrooper. And I only say that because I want that to sink into people listening, because this character does come up later on in the book. So we got to remember that character. But we won't kind of give away what he does in this book. But I think overall, it was very interesting to see that part of a stormtrooper, because he's obviously not in his armor, and knowing that these stormtroopers aren't just soldiers that can't shoot anything. There some of them are actually highly skilled, and I thought that was a pretty neat aspect of this book.
Yeah, it was. It's definitely something we haven't seen in that time period at all.
That's right. And another thing I liked, we did get an appearance by another kind of known bounty hunter. Dengar makes an appearance in this story as well.
That was really cool. That was definitely a moment.
Yes. Yeah, look, because there was a great art. You're talking about artwork shots. There's a great shot of him just sitting there in the cantina. That was really neat when he gets introduced, because he's so recognizable. I mean,
yes.
those six bounty hunters on the bridge in Empire, like those are probably the most recognizable ones. Besides maybe now that we have Jango and maybe a Cad Bane, but for years it was like these were the six bounty hunters in the galaxy, and Dengar was one of them standing there. And
yes,
it's always good to get stories from him popping in. He's done a lot. So, okay. I don't know what else. Anything else standing out to you in this book?
I just think once again, I am still just blown away about how with still images of art, you can still capture cinematic action.
Yeah, good point. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we mentioned this, and I don't know if it was in every single comic talk we had, but I know with Vader we said it. I know that I think in the last volume we said it, but I just want to repeat that it is breathtaking.
Mm-hmm.
How you can capture that cinematic action in a still piece of art.
Yeah. No, they're really, really well done. And it's and it's very well written. I mean, it feels like Star Wars.
It is Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. So so go check this out.
Yes.
Gosh, there was because I'm looking at this now. There's a cameo by another Jedi. I can't give too much away though, but that's
the way to go. There are so many nuggets in this. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. So go check that out. All right. So, of course, we always talk about impacts, from these characters. Any thoughts on that? How it changes the timeline at all for you?
I mean, honestly, for me, it's just, and I feel like it's going to be the same answer for all of these. It just helps fills in the blank. It helps sets up characters as we see them in episode 5. So I'm excited to keep reading these and just seeing their growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it's, here's the thing for me. I've read when these first started coming out, I read through, I think maybe 30 or 40 of the issues, right? So I was only about halfway through the entire series. They're really, and you haven't gone beyond this, right? I think.
No, I haven't.
Right. So you're reading these for the first time. So it does pick up, like, again, searching for the new base and running into just more and more problems. One thing that's it kind of changed my mind a little bit about Luke is that he's taking a lot of risks, finding out who he can be. And of course, you still have, this runs along with the Vader comic, because we're going to get to that. You remember when we covered the first run of Vader, we come across, eventually we'll get to Vader Down,
mm-hmm.
which is the big crossover with this series. So we will get to that point here very shortly. I think actually in the next volume. So there's just, as you do with all heroes, right? You have to be in multiple death-defying situations. But man, you don't talk about somebody that's truly learning how to become powerful. He's just not, Luke is not just going to some cave and trying to train. Like, he is out there not only fighting the rebellion, as you know, but trying to figure out who he is as a Jedi. And I really am just drawn in so much by that storyline. You know, like, I understand the main part of the rebellion is they got to try to find a base, and you know, I can't wait for you to get into I don't even want to say it, because
Say it.
There's a lot of cool things coming in the books that I've read it the first time. So can't wait to dive into it more. But a lot of nostalgic things, you know, and no, Luke and Luke has a lot to learn, and you know, even though he seems like he's not fully there in Empire, which he's not. But gosh, just seeing or reading all of these different experiences just puts so much more weight in the beginning of Empire, when he's still truly searching, right? And it's not until it truly is not until he goes to Yoda that he really discovers what it means to be a Jedi, and you know, he cannot do it by himself. So I just think all of that is worth, you know, diving into these stories for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so rating. What do you give this thing?
I'd probably give it a 3.5.
I'll probably give it a 4. I really liked it.
But you also know what's coming. I don't know what's coming. And so based on what I've read so far, I'm like, I mean, I kind of like the first bit a little better than this, but like, I haven't read. So hindsight, it may change. But at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, there's some really good stuff coming. So looking forward to that. So there's our discussion briefly about Volume 2, Showdown on the Smuggler's Run. In the description, actually, right now, you can click on that. It'll take you right to Amazon. You can buy the volume that we just talked about. Right there on Amazon is really cool. Written by Jason Aaron. I don't think I mentioned that. He's still continuing rewriting this series. Like I said, it's a pretty long series, so we'll keep going. I think there's 13 volumes. So,
all right, let's get reading.
Who down? All right. As always, go to InsideTheForce.com. You can get all of our shows right there on the website, or go to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, and get them as we post them. More Inside the Force coming your way, more Beyond the Sagas, Council Sessions, and of course our new series, Masters of the Order, where we've got interviews so far with Mark Thompson, Claudia Gray, and Catherine Tabor herself, Padme herself. Those are out there, so go check those out. Hannah, as always, thanks for joining me on this adventure.
Thank you. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Take care. May the Force be with you.